Here is a question almost nobody asks. When you type a question into ChatGPT, where does the answer actually come from? Not what company. Where, physically, on planet Earth, does the thinking happen? The answer is a building. A real building, usually in the middle of nowhere, in a place like Iowa or Texas or Louisiana, filled with rows and rows of glowing metal boxes. Running so hot that some of them are cooled with actual liquid. Running so loud that workers wear headphones inside, pulling so much electricity that they sometimes need their own power plant sitting right next to them. That building is called a data center, and right now in 2026, building enough of those buildings has become the single hardest problem in all of artificial intelligence. Harder than making AI smarter, harder than teaching AI to reason, harder than any breakthrough happening inside a research lab. The hardest problem in AI right now is money and electricity and chips and concrete and steel. This year alone, the 4 biggest tech companies on Earth, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Meta, are planning to spend about $725 billion combined just on AI infrastructure. $725 billion in 1 year. That is more money than the entire yearly budget of the United States Department of Defense spent on everything that is not personnel. That is more than the market value of Coca-Cola, McDonald's, and Nike combined. And that number does not even include OpenAI, which has separately committed to something called the Stargate project, a joint plan with SoftBank and Oracle worth $500 billion, aimed at building giant AI data center campuses across states like Texas. Sam Altman has said OpenAI alone may eventually need over $1 trillion of infrastructure just to keep up with demand for ChatGPT. Let that sink in for a second. A single company that did not really exist as a household name until ChatGPT launched in November 2022 is now talking about spending more money than most countries have ever spent on anything. So, how did we get here? Let's go back to the beginning of this specific problem, because it did not start with ChatGPT. It started with a chip. In 2006, a company called Nvidia, run by a man named Jensen Huang, who you have probably seen on stage wearing his black leather jacket at their big yearly event called GTC in San Jose, California, released something called CUDA. CUDA lets scientists use Nvidia's graphics chips, the same chips that were originally built to make video games like Call of Duty and Fortnite look realistic. To do massive amounts of math for other things. Things like training artificial intelligence. Almost nobody noticed CUDA when it came out. But in 2012, a team from the University of Toronto used 2 of Nvidia's gaming graphics cards to win a huge computer vision contest, and every serious AI lab on Earth suddenly wanted Nvidia's chips. Google wanted them. Facebook wanted them. A new company called DeepMind, which Google bought in London in 2014, wanted them. And by the time ChatGPT exploded in popularity in early 2023, becoming the fastest-growing consumer app in human history, hitting 100 million users in about 2 months, every single company trying to build a competing chatbot needed thousands and thousands of these Nvidia chips just to train their model in the first place. To train GPT-4, OpenAI reportedly used around 25,000 of Nvidia's A100 chips running for months. 25,000 chips, each one costing tens of thousands of dollars, all running at the same time, all needing electricity, all needing cooling, all sitting inside a building somewhere. And that was just to train the model once. Once you train it, you also have to run it every single time someone like you types a question into it. That is called inference, and it also needs chips, and it also needs electricity. All day, every day, forever, for as long as the product exists. This is why Nvidia became what people in the industry now half-jokingly call the arms dealer of the AI war. Think about it like this. During a war, weapons companies make money no matter who wins, because everybody needs weapons. During the AI race, Nvidia makes money no matter who wins, Because OpenAI needs Nvidia chips, and Google needs Nvidia chips, and Meta needs Nvidia chips, and Anthropic needs Nvidia chips, and Elon Musk's company xAI needs Nvidia chips. Everybody is buying weapons from the same arms dealer. And because of that, in 2024, Nvidia briefly became the most valuable company on planet Earth, passing both Apple and Microsoft, a company that just a few years earlier was mostly known among teenage gamers buying graphics cards for their PC. By 2026, Nvidia's newest chip, called Blackwell, packs 208 billion tiny switches onto a piece of silicon smaller than your hand, and demand for it is so high that companies are placing orders worth tens of billions of dollars just to get in line. Elon Musk once posted online that trying to get Nvidia's chips felt like trying to score drugs. That is how badly every AI company on Earth needs what Nvidia is selling. Okay, so chips are one piece of the $700 billion puzzle. Here is the second piece, and it is even bigger. Electricity, because here is the thing nobody tells you about ChatGPT, or Gemini, or Claude, or Grok, or Meta AI. Every single time you ask one of them a question, somewhere on Earth, real electricity gets burned to generate that answer. Not a tiny bit. A lot. A single massive AI training cluster, the kind OpenAI or Google uses to build their newest model, can draw around 100 megawatts of power. That is enough electricity to power a small city, not a data center, a city. And these companies are not building one of these clusters. They are building dozens. Right now, total data center electricity use in the United States is around 41 gigawatts, which is roughly the same amount of power as every single nuclear power plant in the entire country combined, all at once. And by 2030, some forecasts say data centers could eat up somewhere between 9 and 17% of all electricity used in the United States. This is why some very serious people are now saying, out loud, in interviews on CNBC, that electricity may become the new oil. Because oil was the resource every country fought over for the entire 20th century, the thing wars were fought about. The thing that made certain countries rich just because they happened to have a lot of it underground. Electricity. Specifically massive, stable, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, always-on electricity is starting to look like the new version of that. And it is causing some genuinely wild things to happen. In Pennsylvania, there is a nuclear power plant called 3 Mile Island. If that name sounds familiar, it is because 3 Mile Island is the site of the worst nuclear accident in American history. A partial meltdown back in 1979 that is still taught in science classes and shown in documentaries. That plant shut down completely in 2019. It sat there, empty, for years. And then in 2024, Microsoft signed a 20-year deal with the company that owns it, Constellation Energy, to restart it, spending about $1.6 billion to bring an infamous, dead nuclear reactor back to life for one specific reason: to power Microsoft's AI data centers. The plant has literally been renamed the Crane Clean Energy Center, and it is expected to start sending power back to the grid around 2027, 100% of it going straight to Microsoft. Google made a similar move, signing a deal with a company called Kairos Power to buy electricity from a new type of small nuclear reactor. Amazon invested directly in nuclear startups and locked in power from an existing plant called Susquehanna, which can generate almost 2 gigawatts. Meta announced deals for up to 6.6 gigawatts of nuclear power across multiple projects. These are some of the biggest, richest companies that have ever existed, and they are all racing to buy nuclear power plants, or restart old ones, or fund brand new experimental reactor designs. Because regular power from the regular electrical grid simply is not enough, and is not reliable enough 24 hours a day to keep their AI running. Mark Zuckerberg announced that Meta is building a single data center in Louisiana so large that it would cover a significant part of Manhattan Island in New York City. Not a Meta building the size of a city block. A Meta building the size of a meaningful chunk of an entire island in New York City. That is the scale we are talking about now. So you have got chips from Nvidia. You have got electricity, sometimes from restarted nuclear plants that used to be famous for meltdowns. And then you have the third piece, which is the actual physical land, steel, concrete, and construction needed to put it all together. Building one of these massive AI data centers now takes somewhere between 18 and 24 months, and that is if everything goes right. If the land is ready, if the permits come through, if the power lines actually connect to the grid on time. And that last part, connecting to the grid, has become such a massive bottleneck that there is now a backlog in the United States of over 2,600 gigawatts worth of energy projects just waiting in line to be connected to the power grid, with average wait times of about 5 years. 5 years, just waiting for the wires to be hooked up. So now picture the entire race. Every major AI company on Earth is trying to outbuild every other AI company. Buying chips from Nvidia as fast as Nvidia can make them. Buying electricity from nuclear plants as fast as those plants can be built or restarted. Buying land the size of small towns to put data centers on, all while racing against a 5-year waiting line just to plug the whole thing into the power grid. And the craziest part is, nobody actually knows if this will ever stop being expensive. Here is the actual, honest $100 billion problem underneath all of this. Every single new generation of AI model costs dramatically more to build than the one before it. GPT-3, the model that first put OpenAI on the map back in 2020, reportedly cost somewhere around $4 to $12 million to train. GPT-4, released in 2023, reportedly cost over $100 million to train. And industry estimates suggest that the next generation of frontier models, the ones being trained right now in 2026 by OpenAI, Google DeepMind, Anthropic, and xAI, could cost somewhere between $500 million and over $1 billion each just for the training run, before you even count the cost of running the finished product for millions of users every single day. That is not a small increase. That is roughly 100 times more expensive in about 6 years. And the scary question that even the smartest people in the industry cannot answer with certainty is this: does the AI actually keep getting proportionally smarter for all that extra money? Or are we reaching a point of diminishing returns, where you spend 10 times more and only get a little bit smarter of a model? Yann, LeCun, who was Meta's chief AI scientist for years and worked alongside Mark Zuckerberg building Llama, publicly left that role in late 2025 and said out loud that he believed large language models like ChatGPT and Gemini have real limits, and that just making them bigger and feeding them more data and more chips will not, by itself, get you all the way to real intelligence. That is one of the most respected AI scientists on Earth basically saying we might be spending hundreds of billions of dollars chasing a wall. Meanwhile, in January 2025, a Chinese company almost nobody outside the industry had heard of, called DeepSeek, released an AI model that performed close to the level of the best American models, but claimed to have trained it for a small fraction of the cost that OpenAI or Google would have spent. When that news hit Wall Street, Nvidia's stock dropped almost 17% in a single day, wiping out around $600 billion of value in 24 hours, which was the single biggest one-day loss for any company in the history of the American stock market. Investors were suddenly terrified that maybe all this spending, all $700 billion of it, was not actually necessary. That maybe a smaller, cheaper, more clever approach could get you almost the same results. Nvidia's stock recovered within weeks, and the giant spending continued anyway, because even if DeepSeek proved you could be more efficient, nobody in Silicon Valley was willing to bet the entire future of their company on being the one who spent less and fell behind. That is the trap. Even if everyone secretly suspects the spending might be a little bit insane, nobody can afford to be the company that stops spending first. Because if AI really does keep getting smarter with more chips and more electricity, the company that blinks first loses the entire race. So Amazon keeps spending around $200 billion a year. Google keeps spending around $180 billion a year. Microsoft keeps spending around $190 billion a year. Meta keeps spending well over $100 billion a year. And analysts at places like Goldman Sachs are now projecting combined spending across the industry could top $1 trillion a year by 2027. $1 trillion every single year just to keep the AI race going, with no clear finish line in sight. Now here is the part of this story that should genuinely make you pause. All of this spending is a bet. A massive society reshaping bet made by a handful of companies that if they build enough data centers and buy enough chips and lock down enough electricity, the AI on the other end will eventually be smart enough and useful enough and profitable enough to pay all of it back. But here is the thing about bets that big. If they are right, the companies that made this bet, the OpenAIs and the Googles and the Metas and the Amazons and the Microsofts, will control the most important technology of the 21st century, the way oil companies once controlled the 20th century. But if they are wrong, if it turns out AI really does hit a wall, the way Yann LeCun warned, or if a cheaper approach like DeepSeek's really can get you most of the way there, then you have a very large number of nuclear power plants and half-built data centers the size of parts of Manhattan, and hundreds of billions of dollars of specialized Nvidia chips sitting there built for a future that arrived slower, or smaller, or differently than everyone expected. And here is the truly wild part. Nobody, not Sam Altman at OpenAI, not Sundar Pichai at Google, not Mark Zuckerberg at Meta, not Jensen Huang at Nvidia, not Elon Musk at XAI, actually knows for certain which one of those two futures we are living in. They are all betting the same way, because none of them can afford to be the one who bet wrong by doing too little. So the actual $100 billion problem, or really the $700 billion problem, or possibly soon the $1 trillion problem, is not that AI isn't smart enough yet. It is that nobody can prove, in advance, whether pouring an almost unimaginable amount of money, electricity, steel and chips into bigger and bigger data centers will keep making AI smarter forever, or whether at some point soon all that spending stops buying you very much more intelligence at all. And until somebody actually finds that answer, the safest bet for every single company involved is to just keep spending, keep building, keep signing deals with nuclear power plants, keep buying every Nvidia chip they can get their hands on, and keep hoping that whatever is on the other side of all that money is worth it. Because in this race, the only thing scarier than spending $700 billion chasing an answer nobody has yet is being the one company that didn't spend it, and watching everybody else win the future without you. That is the real story behind the biggest technology boom of our lifetime. It was never just about who has the smartest AI. It was about who could afford to build the biggest machine to make it.